I don't think you'll be able to hear this, Alex, but we got some intro music going.
I think I can hear it faintly.
Why'd you clap?
You can sync it. He'll hear it in the podcast. Go, go, go. Go, 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 go.
Welcome back to the We Should Talk More podcast. My name is John, and this is the podcast where two lifelong friends who don't have much in common try to get a little bit closer. Cheers.
All right, you want to do your intro?
And my name is John. I'm the co-host here.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Cheers.
Cheers. My name is Josh Cornell, founder and Gymshark athlete of Gymshark Inc. Oh, Paulie D.
Hey, Paul.
What's up?
Paul and I are graced today with one of our, I would say, one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And potential co-host for me, Alex. Alessandro Aranio. Why don't you say hello, Alex?
What's up, everyone? And I feel honored to be here. Hearing that intro music is so nostalgic. I usually listen to the podcast while making my salads, so it's just bringing back memories.
Can you actually hear it, or were you just lying?
No, I'm 100%.
Okay. I don't know if I believe it or not.
This sounds so disingenuous. But I mean, his introduction sounded very genuine, and I appreciated it.
No, 100%. I was listening to you guys earlier today. Obviously, I gotta come up with some points to bring up.
Oh, for real.
Aw.
A few surprises coming down the pipeline, it sounds like.
Very cool.
A little excited.
But you guys might be wondering why Alex is here, because technically this is our very first guest, if we're not including Skeletoni Soprano.
Sure.
So
yeah, he's not here, huh?
No, he's not here. It's November technically, or when this is coming out, it'll be November. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Alex?
As introducing your guests, you're supposed to list off all their accolades.
Alex, why don't you list off your accolades first?
Well, apart from being a part-time actor in a renowned YouTube channel called AlzateFilms, representing the haunting of NJ, I'm also a amateur chef, amateur bodybuilder, not really, but we'll call it that, and also a grad student, and a human being that happens to be of Italian descent, so hence the Anabolic Italian.
And the flag behind you, if you're watching the YouTube video.
That's right, not that one.
Not that one.
No, there's two.
Oh, I didn't see the second one.
The other one.
It was out of frame.
Yeah, we have to let people know, because there might be some colorblind people viewing this, that's an Italian flag. It's not an Irish flag.
Mm-hmm.
Or the audio listeners like me.
Yeah,
who
that's
don't
true.
even see the screen.
Yeah,
that is very true.
I don't really like to talk to the audio listeners, though.
Yeah.
Including you, Alex.
Every time you shit on them, I'm like, come on, I'm an audio listener. Stop.
Jeez. Yeah, no, I respect audio listeners more than YouTube watchers, because who has the time of day to sit down and watch a YouTube video
Our job.
for an hour and a
We're
half?
talking about our job.
To all the YouTube watchers out there.
Just turn off your computer.
Okay, I was going to say much worse. But anyway.
Oh my God.
Before we get into it, Alex will share a little bit about his Anabolic Italian social media, and then we'll get a little bit into the actual diet itself and learn a little bit about it. And then we'll close off with some takeaways. I think, what was it that we were closing off with? Ooh, somehow my notes are taking a transcription of everything I'm saying right now, so we have it on the record.
Great.
Ooh, you can cut that part off. So
Wow.
we'll close off by getting a little bit of like the direction that Alex plans on taking with the Anabolic Italian and some goals he has with it. So before we get into that, though, we always have to start with the very special
Coffee hour.
And what did you brew up today?
I brewed up my own beer. My dad, actually, my confirmation name was Samuel, so I created something called Samuel Adams Oktoberfest.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And
I never knew that.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, you never heard him? His dad call him Sammy.
No, I never heard that.
Yeah, just like a friend of the show, Sam. He has a lot in common with her.
Also Sam, yeah.
I brewed up because I was running a little late today. I just picked up a McDonald's coffee. And what does their
Mickey
special?
D's.
Yep, some Mickey D's. What does their special guest have with him today?
Well, today I just brewed up some fresh espresso made with my mocha pot. For all
Ooh,
my Italians out there, they know what that is. I brew this up every morning on the stovetop. It's great.
I can smell it.
So, I
Mm.
bet you can. It smells so good.
Mm.
Does look good. So, what have you been up to this week, John?
Let me think. What have I been up to? I've been working. Been really busy because I'm transferring over to the studios team at my job. Also, they told me that they're gonna listen to my podcast. A couple people that I spoke to
So
because
cool.
they're all like creative people. So I gotta say nice things. No, I mean they're all really cool. I'm transferring over to the studios team, which is like a creative branch in my company. But I'm transitioning and working at my current job, so I'm like 25% right now, but it's more like 50-50 because I feel like neither team communicates, so they're just like I'll give them everything and the other team wants to still give me stuff. So it's been fun. I like the new job. It's really cool.
It's great to hear. I'm happy to hear.
How
for
about you? You heard me?
Yeah, I did.
Because
I did.
typically I don't ask.
I appreciate it.
I'm
Thank you,
trying
John.
to be a better person.
He's taking my feedback. I really should listen to some feedback too sometimes. So anyway, yeah, this week actually, I don't know if you remember from last week. I think I mentioned that I was doing some like personal studies to get things done, and how it was the first step to actually getting back onto doing some self-studying. This past week, I didn't do any of that. So, off to a great start.
Self-studying and what?
Some computer programming like concepts that I've been looking to build in a little bit more, but more on the like system design aspect of it or side of it. Looking to see if I was to ever develop an app and start my own company, how would I be prepared to actually scale that up? So I knew that was always an interesting concept, but not only if I was to build my own application, but if I was to go for new job applications that would be in the direction of programming, system design is a common interview that you can have with
It's like
companies.
a topic you want to
so
kind of master.
So it's a topic that I would want to be well-rounded in, yeah.
Cool.
So to say what I did this week, I didn't do that. Because it was quite a busy week. I went out to Hoboken on Friday with a friend of mine that I met through the boot camp that I did this past year. Talked about it on the podcast. Listen to the some of the career episodes if you're interested in that. Then on Saturday, we went out for a hayride.
Oh, we did.
So you completely skipped over that, but along with our friend Sam, friend of the show, boyfriend of John.
This is like the fourth time.
Yeah, that's how it works. I saw John
like doing the math in my head. I'm like, wait a minute.
Like 4 shout-outs, already won tonight.
It's like we always talk about like if we had like a bingo for things to check off that we say in the show. We have to mention Sam and have to mention Jonathan. I have to say like at least like 50 times.
Yep. So I know there's a lot of new listeners coming in each week, so we have to make sure the first 20 minutes is dedicated to catching everyone up.
Yeah.
And so if you're not all that interested in being caught up, skip ahead to minute 15. I think John planned it out to be edited that we actually start talking about relevant things around that.
If we're not like up to that time, then I'll just have to have like 4 minutes of nothingness.
Please put in that 4 minutes of buffer. So
The theme song.
yeah, I think that was a really fun night. We
Yeah, it was
went
fun.
out, we went to a farm, we did a corn maze as well, and Jonathan led us through the whole thing.
Wait, did you say a hayride too?
Yeah, so the hayride takes you to the corn maze. Then you do your corn maze and you come back to finish the hayride.
It wasn't
Was
like
the hayride haunted?
No, it was just like
yeah.
an average hayride.
Yeah, it was pretty haunted though.
I don't know. Like those hayrides, they're never actually scary. They used to be when I was a kid, but I guess not anymore.
The one that we went on with you and like and when you came,
Field of Terror,
that
right?
October.
Field of Terror?
Is that Field of Terror?
I believe so.
I don't remember the name, but that one was really well. It was fun because we were just joking around the whole time.
Yeah,
That's
that
the
was-
hayride
Which
we
was the
did-
one that we waited an hour to get on?
Was that the one we waited? It was like 2019.
I don't think it was an
Alright.
hour.
Was that when you were visiting from Wisconsin, Josh?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, no, that was Castle.
Oh yeah, that's the one you guys go
It
to.
wa-
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun, but like it's never scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
I'm gonna
this
get
one
scared.
this one was actually just like a legit farm, and they were just taking you around the farm to get over to the corn maze and then get over to the pumpkin patch. But it was at night, oddly enough. Anyway, I think that's just the time we got our tickets.
Yeah, it was like pitch black, but otherwise, there were some creepy kids on it. Anyways,
About them, how are you?
I'm hanging in there. I'm recovering from an exam I took on Sunday of all days. So, one of my classes ended, so at least I got that out of the way. But yeah, I've just been busy. Now I'm just trying to do like other things outside of school, trying to catch back up on my like normal routine because this past month has just been crazy with school and everything. I haven't even gotten a chance to really focus on my content. And a lot of people that might, follow me on Instagram know I just haven't been posting as much often, and it's mostly just because of school. It's just been crazy and work and all that. But I'm looking forward to getting back into everything, and this is kind of like the beginning of me getting back into stuff. So
yeah, that's nice.
I
feel like it's like a nice start or like restart for you. Kind of like we'll be asking you like what got you started. So I think
yeah,
remembering all those things will give you a little more passion, hopefully.
Yeah, and I think that makes for a great transition into the show. But like I'm notorious for, let's derail a little bit. Why are we dressed the way that we're dressed today?
Oh, well, I texted Josh for us to wear our workout clothes because, we're talking to Alex. He's a big fitness guy. So I thought we'd like dress in fitness clothes. So that's what we're doing today.
When you say big, you mean like he's really heavy into fitness. He's not big like,
All jacked on the steroids.
Depends how you define big.
I'd say you're pretty big. You're buff.
He prioritizes it in his life.
Manlet big. Or a manlet.
A manlet. Can you define that? Can you define that for our dumbass listeners?
I was gonna own up to not knowing what a manlet is.
It's like a derogatory term for short males who are under like 5, maybe 5'8". I'm not even 5'8", but I feel like people that are 5'8" might get grouped into it.
Do you have to be muscular?
Basically like what?
Does it have to be like a muscular short man or just a short?
Anybody under 5'8", because they're like you're like a small guy.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen that on Twitter. I just didn't know what the exact qualifications were.
Yeah. Well, what about if you're somebody like me, above 7'3"? What do you call yourself then?
Lucky.
7'3". Yeah, you're just like a baller at that point.
I think you're a giant.
Yeah. I'm 13 feet tall.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And 16 years old.
Yeah, you got some genetic mutations there, buddy.
I'm only 16. I have a lot of room to grow. Anyways, let's get into you, Alex. Unless you had anything you wanted to add that's non-anabolic Italian related. Do you have anything you wanted to share? Any fun facts?
I mean, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, other than the fact that I'm still waiting to film the next Haunting of NJ.
Yeah, we might have.
We're out of season now.
We might have.
We have to do this quick within the week.
What, the Haunting of NJ?
Yeah.
No.
We can do it.
Next year's the 5-year anniversary, so we'll have to plan something
from
that.
Like the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah. Anyways, let's get into. So I guess a lot of you may or may not know Alex. I have mentioned Alex on the show before, but just in the sense of him being in AlzateFilms. I haven't touched at all on his cooking adventures and his whole brand that he's created, the Anabolic Italian. So I guess to start, Alex, I guess at a very, if you were to explain this to someone just on the street, what is the Anabolic Italian?
So the page and the channel and just the brand in general of the Anabolic Italian, it aims to recreate Italian food the way that I grew up, knowing it, but making it a little healthier. And when I say healthy, I don't mean, like the grains and nutrients of it. I mean more lower calories for people that want to lose weight and they want to maintain their muscle mass. People that are into fitness like me. But Italian Americans have a way of viewing food that we're very proud of our food and we don't like tampering with it. So if you look at like the generic like Americans version of like our food that's like supposed to be healthy, they're using a lot of alternative ingredients that we wouldn't like to use. Like for instance, the first thing that comes to my mind is somebody popping out a jar of like Hunt's tomato sauce or something like that to cook their pasta in. And I'm like, and then I see like the way people make like anabolic pizzas, and granted, I haven't made one yet, but that's because I'm waiting to do it the right way. Um, and it's just like my goal is to create authentic Italian dishes that people who are into, calorie counting and want to lose fat and build muscle at the same time, they can follow these recipes and still get that same taste and the same flavor. Now you're gonna have to. There's always a balancing act where you're not gonna get 100% of the way with the taste, but you could get pretty damn close without having to, risk the integrity of adding a lot of calories that you don't need. And we could get into the diet aspect of it and how that actually works later on. But that's in essence what the goal is recreate Italian American food and Italian in general. Because I do use a lot of recipes that are actually from Italy, not just here in America.
So without getting too much into it just quite yet, I'm very
Yeah.
interested in this idea of you kind of rebranding Italian food and how that might potentially offend Italian people.
Yeah, and it's actually true because even my own mother criticizes me for using like lower fat alternatives in Italian food and some of the dishes that I grew up with, and she's like, "Why would you use low fat? No Italian would ever use low fat." And I'm like, okay, but this is not for the general Italian. It's for the Italian American or even just an Italian in Italy who wants to eat the same food but doesn't want to, engorge themselves in a bunch of unnecessary calories for their goals, obviously. And there are times where I eat out or I eat my family's food and it is full calorie, full fat, but those are a minority of the time now because I can make my own food my own way and I still make it relatively authentic. So, I obviously know that most people are going to be critical. I mean, we're all critical of ourselves. And when I mean us Italians are very critical of anybody that tries to change the original way of making Italian food. And I'm guilty of it too, like I said. But for the purposes of my channel, I think, and the community that follows me, I think that it works pretty well.
And I know I spoke with you before about this. I think you mentioned that like you didn't really see anybody else doing what you're doing right now. Like there aren't many anabolic like food pages that are strictly Italian recipes, right?
No, so I haven't found one that's just Italian food, like mine. There are a bunch of like niche ones that maybe they'll just do baking only, or they'll just do like cooking only, or they like specialize in like a certain dish, whether it be like breakfast or some sort of, I don't know. There's so many different people out there that I follow and I kind of get inspiration from. But yeah, nobody actually, I don't think I've seen anyone do like a specific ethnic food, not just Italian, but any like ethnicity, like even just like American food. Like it's always a mix of different, which is cool because I like to be diverse in my own cooking too. Like I don't only cook Italian food. I only post, well, not even that. I'll even post like if I make like an Asian dish, I'll put it in my story and then I have like I don't know what you call it on Instagram where you like save like the stories into like a
draft.
Highlights.
I get
highlights.
the highlights.
Yeah,
The highlights.
that's what
Yeah.
it is.
I have like a highlight that has the globe on it, and that's just like recipes that are from around the world that it's not Italian, it's not
that's
American.
cool. Yeah, that you put it like that. Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so
I mean, I think that helps with the question that we want to start off with as we get into the brand related questions. And you can expand on it a little bit now. Here is like what really inspired you to start the Anabolic Italian?
well, I mean, when I first got into this diet and this whole, and I want to call it a community because there's a select amount of people that are actually doing this and making these recipes and following the recipes and making their own content and being creative with it. I just saw that there was a lack of Italian food in there. And like I said, the Italian food that you do see is they use ingredients that I would never use. I would feel ashamed to use as an Italian American. So I wanted to create, the foods that I grew up with. I wanted to make them authentic. But I wanted them to meet my needs and for what I needed in order to achieve my goals, and fitness related goals. So, that's pretty much where the inspiration came out of. And I felt like, I really like cooking. I really like baking and I like combining different things to make different flavors that I don't think other people have come up with. So I try to like be very original in my own recipes too. But at the same time, it's just, really just that drive to influence other Italian Americans that it's still possible to eat the foods that we grew up with without, sacrificing the authenticity of the food.
Um, something I thought about that you mentioned earlier. You said that your mom sometimes gets upset with like the recipes that you make. So
Yeah,
have you?
and
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead. You had a specific question?
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I have you ran into this online at all? Because I know you mentioned to me that you had some followers that were like international followers. So have you had people ever like upset or like critique things that you've made?
Yeah, I think one of the first things that I uploaded was frittata, which is like I don't want to say an omelet because that's an under exaggeration of what it actually is, but I uploaded it and I had it for breakfast. And in Italy, you don't eat a frittata for breakfast. It'd be more like for lunch. So I actually had somebody comment like, "We would never eat this for breakfast," blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, "Okay, I'm eating it for breakfast. I'm American, and regardless of how Italian I am, I still have American habits. So I don't actually eat eggs for breakfast anymore, but at the time I was. So it's not even just the food that I'm making or the way that I make it, but if I label it as breakfast, it's
Interesting.
gotta be breakfast, right? It's gotta be actually a set time. Like the same thing with a cappuccino. You never have a cappuccino after the morning. You only drink, and I don't really drink cappuccinos, but that's just an example. Like we're very rigid in when we eat our meals, what we put in our meals. It's actually very strict and kind of OCD. But
Wow.
I feel like all Italians are kind of OCD in some ways.
What's the reasons?
Just very
All
proud of our
tradition?
food. I don't know. I don't know. It's just the way we are.
Wow. Um, I think it was
We're
very
built different.
I
yeah.
think it's the passion too, I guess. Like you guys are so passionate about like your nationality that you want it like the I guess the tradition aspect of it, you want to keep like how things are.
Yeah, I guess it's always like a fear of the unknown. And when
Mhm.
you change something, when it's in a recipe or anything, the fear of the unknown is like, oh no, I don't want to, I can't imagine doing it. Same thing with pineapple pizza. And I will never eat pineapple pizza. But that's why we all hate it, is because we don't know what it tastes like. Like, I couldn't imagine tasting fruit in a pizza like that. But,
Mhm.
people do it and people are more adventurous. But, uh, I can't imagine eating pineapple on pizza. And that's just one example too. Yeah.
Find pineapple pizza not too bad,
Yeah, I
and I
was
like
I,
pineapple tacos as well.
I didn't want to say like pineapple pizza is one of my favorites. I think me and Alex have
Had your
butted heads about
Yeah,
that
we've
before.
hashed that before. Yeah, we've
yeah.
hashed that before.
So I mean, I just have a few thoughts, and maybe no specific questions here, but always feel free to chime in and add anything that you might want to add to what I'm thinking. But like, I like what you're doing a lot because it's very niche. You're looking at an anabolic diet and you found your space in it, and not only did you find your space, it meets the needs that you would want as your own customer for it. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of directions you can take that. First, you are your own customer, which is like I think one of the most important things when you're thinking about starting your own brand. One of the more important things if you were to take this into a business, and start like promoting any foods that you may have been able to make your own recipe for, because now you are the one who's like directly being able to provide feedback on what you're doing, and then as you like grow that customer base, you can have other people also interested in like providing feedback and people that you can easily relate to. But
Yeah.
because it's so specific, it's easy to work off of. And so I think starting there is it's good to be able to get that target audience right off the bat.
Yeah. No, I mean and you're right. I am my own customer. Uh this this evening, for example, I cooked my chicken marsala recipe. And not because I just didn't know what to do. I had no ideas. So I was like, you know what, let me just look at my page, see what I can make up real quick. What do I have in the fridge? And literally I was like, oh, I have all these ingredients, I'll just make this. And there's no guesswork because the recipe's there.
Yeah.
I know how to cook it. So that's what I did. So yeah, 100%. My French toast a la carbonara, I was having that for 3 months straight every morning. I eventually had to stop making it because I was getting flavor fatigue from it. But yeah, I mean, I do rely heavily on my own recipes at times, especially when I'm in a time crunch.
And how much of like the influence for your recipes do you think is just things that you're thinking about, or do you take any feedback from people that you've like commenting or just stuff that you've seen online yourself?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that I necessarily have the biggest following at all to get that kind of feedback, but I do incorporate a lot of like inspiration from other channels that I follow. And Giallo Zafferano being one of them. It's an Italian page, and literally like every day they'll post like 3 different videos of how to make different kinds of foods and stuff like that. And I'll like look at the ingredient. I'll go right to the ingredients list and be like, okay, what can I substitute here that I can make my own version of this and still make it authentic. So that's just one example, but there's a bunch of other like influencers that aren't just Italian, like Greg Doucette, Remington James, a couple of names off the top of my head. And they actually have cookbooks that I bought. And it just gives me like ideas of not necessarily how to make Italian food, but how to make like food lower in calories and, kind of make it meet my needs and the people who follow me, their needs as well. So a lot of it is influenced, but a lot of it is me having to like make ends meet in the sense that I'm trying to take one influence and another influence and make them coincide with each other. So
yeah, I love that.
So, I mean, I guess as like one last question in this section, unless anything else comes up from as like tangent points that we can go off of, is what are some common struggles you find in like maintaining this brand? I mean, you just mentioned earlier as you were doing your introduction, it's been a while since you've been posting content. Like what causes those slumps? What other struggles you might be facing as you're going through carrying on a life of being the Anabolic Italian?
yeah, well, the hard thing with like maintaining my brand is, I'm my own brand. I'm one person, so it's hard for me to get a lot of feedback, like especially because I am niche. It's hard for me to find enough people that are gonna do the same thing as me. So I don't really have a benchmark, you know what I mean? So there's not many recipes that are similar to mine that I could just go based off of. So if my recipe is good or bad is really up to my own interpretation, which isn't necessarily reliable. I cook for my girlfriend. Shout out Erin. She also takes all my pictures.
Friend of the show, Erin.
She takes all the pictures of my food, or almost all of them, so she makes it look nice and pretty. But other than that, the page is run by me. There's nobody else involved, so I'm the only voice. So I don't know. I don't always know if it's going to be successful or not. I mean, I pride myself on having a pretty good, taste bud capability. So I feel like I know if the food tastes good or not. But another challenge has been time management because I work and I go to school. So all of that, it takes a lot of time to make these recipes. And a lot of times I only have the chance to make it once before I post it. So I have to make sure that I get it right. There's not much room for trial and error. It's really just, make the recipe. If it doesn't come out good, you can't post it, So those are definitely some of the biggest challenges I've faced thus far. And it's a lot of learning that's involved, but a lot of like wasted opportunities, because if I have an idea and I change something last minute and it ruins the whole plate, then there goes my whole week's worth of ideas for a post. So
got you.
Has that happened often where you've had to like scrap content, and like is it a thing that you've tried to, I guess, like figure out how to prevent?
It's happened occasionally. I've done a pretty good job of mitigating the risk by not adding something last minute, but it does happen. Or if I overestimate how much I need, and then I add too much into let's say I add too much of a certain ingredient into it and it tastes like I just don't have, even if the picture would come out good and I know, okay, I could take all 50 grams off of the ingredient list, I don't feel it justified in posting something that didn't taste right to me. So a lot of it is just being honest and upfront. So whenever I post something, just know that I think it tastes amazing. But if it doesn't taste amazing, yeah, there's always that opportunity cost where I could have made something that I knew would have come out just as good, and I could have posted, but I wanted to be extra and add something new to it, and then I just ruined the whole recipe.
Well, I'm very interested for you to like walk us through the steps. You have a new recipe. When do you, how well, what goes into making this new recipe? What's the inspiration to it? To the steps of you actually putting it together and then sharing it, and then if you ever do any more experimentation after that.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll usually brainstorm myself without looking at any external videos or content, and I'll just say, okay, I think back to like all the food that I've had throughout my life. Growing up, one of my favorite dishes was chicken francese, which is like a lemon chicken, and for those who don't know what chicken francese is. But it's a classic Italian American dish. It's really good, but traditionally you make it with eggs and butter, whole eggs, not egg whites. And I always, that's something I always craved, right? So when I went on my diet, I was like, okay, let's cut down on the butter, let's cut down on the whole eggs, and let's make it anabolic. I looked at a couple different recipes. I looked at I go through like the traditional recipes, um and it's not necessarily Italian American recipes. It could be Italian from Italy, which is more like pollo al limone, which is lemon chicken, not necessarily chicken francese. I think that's more of an Italian American name for it, but um I'll look at like the traditional Italian way of making it, the Italian American way of making it, but these are both high calorie versions or higher calorie versions. And then I'll say, okay, based off of my experience of watching other people make things lower calorie, how can I do it to this? So I'll sub out. Okay, I can sub out the eggs for egg whites, and it'll generally be the same. If you're using milk, like whole milk or cream, I could use fat-free milk or cream. Not cream, but or Greek yogurt to thicken it up. Um, I'll go a little bit lighter on the flour. I'll cut down the amount of flour. What's good about the Italian recipes from Italy is that they always list the grams. So when you can actually measure out how much you're putting, and then you can compare it. If it calls for like, I don't know, 150 grams of flour, and you want to cut it down to 75, okay, you could do it. With American recipes, they go by cups and stuff like that. It's a lot harder to actually nail down, um, because I find weighing is more accurate, and a lot of people prefer weighing because you can estimate calories with a more accurate. It's the most accurate way of estimating calories, basically, instead of eyeballing it with a cup. So once I do that, I just calculate basically, okay, how many calories have I reduced by making these substitutions and changing the amounts of the ingredients that I'm using, and then I'll go into this phase where I actually try it. So I'll actually like make it, and I'll see like, is it too thick? Is it too thin? Now this comes back to the challenge where I was just talking about, where sometimes I'll brainstorm a recipe, and the first time I try it is the time that I dedicate to actually making the post, where I'll actually post on my page. So it's like, okay, this has to work, so I have to make it work. And a lot of times I've been successful. Like I said, there's been a couple times where I've planned out a recipe and it came out and it looked like crap. I was thinking about my lemon meatballs, polpette al limone, and I wanted to have like a white wine kind of look to it, where it looked like a lemony kind of meatball recipe. But because of what I used, it ended up looking like shit brown. I was like, oh, I can't post this.
Oh, wonderful.
I can't post that. Yeah. So I mean, that's pretty much the process. And if I had more time, I probably would do more trial and error. But just because of um the time commitment, it's been hard for me to actually try out recipes 3-4 times before actually posting it. But that would be the ideal method for somebody in my shoes.
Is that not something that you'd want to come back to and try again and see if you can post it? Like, is it really that bad of a thing to say, okay, well, I scheduled to have this posted today, but let me try again tomorrow and see if it works?
Well, yeah, that's usually what would happen, is if it doesn't come out the way I want it on the day that I actually want to post it, I'll delay it. But the thing is, if I delay it, then I would wait the whole week because there's only usually one day in the week where I could actually sit down, make the whole post, and then post it. And I've done that like in the summer where I've actually made a couple recipes ahead of time and I've taken the pictures ahead of time so then I can actually post it, when a recipe goes wrong, I can post that recipe instead. I'm thinking of my pesto that I actually recently posted. I had a couple of pesto pictures of the pesto sauce that I made, and in lieu of a time where I know I won't be able to post anything new that week. So at least I had something, like I had a backup. But just because I've had to do that a couple times, I ran out of my backups. So now I'm kind of at scratch where I need to come up with backups and I need to come up with actual posts. So it's a, like I said, and it's hard when you don't have like a lot of people like trying out the recipes. I have Erin, she tries out my recipe. My mom refuses to try my food. So I can't even have like a third opinion. John, you like my carbonara,
I did,
but
yeah. I think you made the anabolic version
yeah.
the last time. Yeah, I liked it.
I'll come over for dinner any night you ask.
No, so yeah, like just having that lack of feedback, like, and people can look at it and say, "Oh, that looks really good," but without tasting it, you're never gonna know.
Hmm.
That's the one thing that I kind of lack is I have my own taste and I have Erin's taste. That's it. It's only two people,
Hmm.
and so that's the one thing that I think is like the biggest challenge in terms of my own acceptance of my work is like, oh, I'd rather make it and have a bunch of people taste it and say it's good. That way I know for sure. But in terms of the process, yeah, that's pretty much how it goes.
Yeah, that's so interesting because it reminds me of like a lot of the conversations we've had about like just content creation and how I mean I guess for cooking specifically it does rely heavily on like the people that are consuming it because you liking it, you liking the way it looks or liking the way it tastes is only so much. So like it's just interesting because it reminds me of like the stuff that we've spoken about for like filmmaking where like sometimes like you could be satisfied just yourself after making something and like not care if other people see it, but like it's completely different with cooking because the whole aspect of cooking is like the tasting part. So like I could say it looks nice online but haven't actually tried it.
Well, yeah, it's like kind of like what you were talking about in the episode where you talk about your biggest failures, and you talked about when I had to talk to you about continuing that Haunting of NJ, or no, it was Papa Loves Mambo, when we were shooting that sequel, and you were down about the way it came out at the fight scene. Yeah, it's you're always your biggest critic, but also it does depend on how other people view the situation. So if I make a dish, I'd rather hear other people say they like it rather than me say, "Oh yeah, it tastes good."
Yeah.
That's that validation. And when you're filmmaking or when you're cooking a recipe and you're the only one tasting it and you're the only one looking at it, you don't really know what other people are gonna think because you can only go based off of what you see, and you always tend to be harder on yourself.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
I mean, which is
yeah.
why it's extremely valuable that you are your own customer here, just because like this is something that you are looking to do for yourself. As like you're seeing, well, what can I do to actually make food that I'm happy eating as an Italian person, and also being able to meet my health needs. But yeah, you still run into struggles of, well, maybe this doesn't really taste all that good to other Italians. So anyway, before we get to, I mean, we can go on about this for so long. It sounds like, especially the brand stuff. I think we're enjoying it a lot, but we did line up a lot of questions when it comes to the diet itself.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
and
Shoot.
I'm sure we won't be able to get through all of them, but
That's okay.
I guess to start off with, I've realized as we were having the conversation, maybe we should have started with this question, is to give us a little bit of background as to what the anabolic diet is, what the benefits are, well, what's involved to actually being able to practice the diet.
Yeah. So, the anabolic diet is basically it's a version of calorie counting. The term anabolic refers to the anabolic benefit that you get from eating high protein. You retain muscle mass, especially when you're on a calorie deficit where you tend to lose a lot of body weight. The higher intake of protein allows you to maintain your muscle. Whereas if you're really in a deficit, a calorie deficit, meaning that you're lacking energy, physical energy, your muscle is going to be burned off with it. So the anabolic diet is really for people who want to lose body fat, and they want to do so while also either making muscle or just maintaining the muscle they already have. It's really hard to maintain. I mean, it's really hard to, gain muscle on a deficit. Just from my personal experience, I lost a lot of muscle mass, and I was technically still on the anabolic diet, but I was in a very severe calorie deficit. For me personally, I was eating around, and I don't recommend this to anybody. I was eating around 1,400 calories at one point, which is very low for a male. Even though I'm short, that doesn't mean that I can't be eating. I should have been eating probably around 1,800 at the time, but I was doing like 300 calories less than that.
How much are
And
you eating now?
yeah, so the anabolic Italian and the anabolic diet itself is really more about just getting into a slower, more moderate deficit while also just maintaining a certain amount of protein. So the protein is based on your body weight. The intake is about a gram per pound, maybe a little bit less. Some people say you don't really need a gram per pound. I forget what it is per kilogram, but I'm not British or European technically. I mean, I am kind of European, but I don't use kilograms. Uh, but yeah. So you just and I did hear you earlier mention. I don't know if this was live or not, but we don't technically care about the macros like fats or carbs. I always list them, um, and it is important to keep your fats at least to like a certain minimum amount, and it varies for everybody. So there's no one amount of grams of fat that I can prescribe for anybody, and I wouldn't prescribe it anyway. But um, if you are severely lacking a fat intake, you're gonna have like no sex drive. You're going to have very high levels of fatigue, also with a low carb intake. So it just comes as part of like being in a calorie deficit. If you go too hard, you're gonna lack energy just to do normal things. So there's always a balancing act with the anabolic diet. So just
So
to sum it up in 2 words, what it is, it's lower calories, so lower than your maintenance level calories, which is basically the amount of energy you need to maintain your current weight. So you want to eat below that, and you want to keep your protein at a gram per pound. That's pretty much what it is.
so with that, what are your targets? What is your target calorie intake? What is your target macro intake?
So currently I'm eating now. I'm technically on like I'm recomp, which is like I'm trying. I lost so much weight. I was 155 when I first started this whole thing. Before the anabolic Italian, when I just started the diet itself, I was like 155. Felt like I had a lot of body fat on me. Um, I then I started eating that like very high or very low calorie intake, and I got down to like I think the lowest I got to was like 115, which is really low
Jeez.
for a male. And so now I'm trying to mass up and gain some muscle because I obviously lost a lot of muscle mass in that process. And that is kind of my own fault. I went a little too hard on the deficit. But currently, I'm trying to get around 2,000 to 2,400. Now that's a big range. The reason I say that is because I'm not very strict with, not eating out. So I do account for the days that I do go out to eat, probably taking in more than I'm actually counting. So my goal is like 2,000 a day, but I do know that some days I'm going over that. So 2,000 to 2,400, and I still try to hit. So right now I'm about 124. So I'll try to get at least 124 grams of protein a day. Like I said, it's not really that, especially if you're in a surplus, you don't really need that much protein. But I like to get it anyway. I feel like it's like an insurance. Like I know that at least I'll maintain my muscle even if I'm not gaining any. But that's pretty much my goals right now, is just to slowly increase my calories as time goes on, and just monitor my weight to see if I'm growing in muscle mass or if I'm gaining fat, and trying to do more of the former rather than the latter.
How long have you been doing the diet? I don't remember when exactly you started.
Yeah, I started last September, so it's been a little bit over a year now. Um, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's been over a year.
And like after doing it for that long, do you have any like are there any common misconceptions that have come up or like things that people have assumed like the anabolic diet is like that you've kind of learned now isn't true?
Um, Not necessarily. Like a lot of people do criticize it for the fact that because you're eating at a lower calorie intake, you're cutting down your fats a lot, and that has a very big hormonal impact. So a lot of people associate it with creating also eating disorders, which I can attest to. If you're not careful with, you can develop. Um, and I do kind of err people on the side of caution when they try to do it because when you get into a very low calorie intake, food tends to be on like your priority just naturally because you're like almost in starvation mode, if not in starvation mode. So the thing you care about the most is getting another meal in you, not about anything like having sex or going out with your friends or anything. So that's one criticism of it. Another misconception is that, because you're on a low calorie deficit, you're not getting enough fats in because fats per gram have more calories. So for every gram of fat is 9 calories, whereas for every gram of carb and protein, it's 4 calories. So basically, if you're eating more fat, you're getting more calories. So they total up a lot quicker than carbs and protein. But it's still important to get fats, and I'm a proponent of getting those healthy fats in. It's just finding unique ways to get them in because a lot of the foods that have fats are also higher in carb and hence very heavy in calories. Like I'm thinking of like peanut butter, oil is very high in fat and only fat. But so that was a bad example of fats and carbs. But like cookies, junk food, French fries that they're cooked and deep fried in oil.
Mhm.
So when you have the mix of like carbs and fats in high
Yeah.
concentrations, that's very calorie dense food. So and that's why Italian food sometimes the traditional way is very, I don't want to say unhealthy. It's not unhealthy, but it's very fattening in the sense, you're using olive oil to cook all your food and you're using fatty cheese like mozzarella, um, provolone even, so you're combining a lot of high fat foods with high carb foods like pasta, so
Mhm. So
uh, but anyway, yeah, a lot of misconceptions around the fact that we don't get enough fat in. It's definitely important to do so. So don't lack off on your fat just because you're trying to cut down on calories.
got it. Um, so one thing that I wanted to see and get your take on and see if you are able to answer this. There's several different diets out there. There's like a low calorie diet. You can have a fasting diet. You can have a low carb diet. And so, t what are some of the different diets out there, and what would what's the conventional like diet and tips, and what would be a anabolic diet practitioner's take on it?
So I mean the most popular diet right now, and I never actually did it. I did like a version of it before I did the anabolic diet. Is the keto diet, where you're basically cutting all carbs. So you cut out your bread, you cut out your pasta, you cut out your potatoes, you cut out a bunch of high carb foods, sugar. Um, and you're basically just eating fat and protein as much as possible. There are a ton of like reports of like the health hazards of doing that, but the idea behind it is that it reduces your ability to gain fat through your insulin. Now, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, so I don't know the exact science behind it, but um, I know for myself, it didn't work. And intuitively, for somebody who follows the anabolic diet or someone who's just calorie counting in general, because there are people that follow that just calorie count and eat at a calorie deficit. They're not necessarily caring about building muscle. So, um, if you are only eating fat and protein, you're still eating pretty high calorie dense foods because fat is more calorically dense than carbs. But because of the higher insulin levels associated with eating carbs, that's why people try to stay away from them, and sugars and stuff like that. I also used to do fasting. I fasted for like a couple months in college, and all these diets, basically the keto diet, the intermittent fasting diet, they're all based on getting you into a calorie deficit, whether it's explicit or not. The people that do lose weight on them is because they're in a calorie deficit, just like the people who are following the anabolic diet. It's just that they're not. It's more of like a backwards way of admitting it, because if you're only eating, at a certain period, you're reducing your calorie intake. Unless you're like binging, like me. That's what I did when I was fasting. I would binge during my eating period. So yeah, I don't have to track what I'm eating, but I'm eating so much in that period of time that I'm still in a surplus.
Yeah, I'm guilty of
So
that.
I'm still gonna gain weight. So
I'm definitely guilty of that one. I remember when I was
yeah.
doing my intermittent fasting that as soon as I got back, or as soon as maybe my fasting period ended or right before it started, I would go straight into like having a huge dinner before I have to worry about not eating for the next 16 hours. And as soon as it's over, immediately jump to like whatever I had prepared to eat, and not be concerned about anything that I'm eating during the day. That was like some points during my intermittent fasting like practice, but other points where I would actually make sure like my carb intakes was a lot lower, because the purpose of intermittent fasting is very similar to what you were mentioning with the keto diet, is really just to lower the carbs. It's just in different methods. But I guess you mentioned the point of it being a very caloric deficit type of diet, or it will cause maybe the same type of effects of a caloric deficit diet. So do you find that in a diet, whether intermittent fasting, keto, or a caloric deficit diet, that it would be next to impossible to really build up your muscle mass?
Well, I mean, I honestly don't. I can only go based off of my own experience, and I definitely think that it's harder to build muscle in a deficit, because when you're in a deficit, you're going to have lower levels of energy. Especially if you're doing a calorie deficit for a long period of time, say over a span of a couple weeks, months. Over time, you're gonna have no energy. If you go into a calorie deficit tomorrow and you're in a surplus today, you might feel fine for your workout, but you can't work out effectively if you don't have enough energy. So that's one reason why being in a caloric deficit, it just doesn't help you build muscle, like the actual physical ability to go in and get a good workout. But also, and this is more like scientific, you need the energy in order to build muscle. You need the protein in order to build muscle. Protein synthesis. I don't want to sound like a dumbass because I didn't study this in college. And there are a lot of people out there that are more qualified to talk about the
You
actual.
could tell me anything right now, and I'd believe you.
Anatomy of it. But
I will add, and look, I don't have the evidence here either. But there's one thing that I think was always brought up when I was thinking about following the intermittent fasting diet myself, was when you're in this period of not having energy, your body begins to go for the ketones, is what it would be, where it's only available when you have started producing low enough insulins to start resorting to ketones instead of your instead of carbohydrates or fats that are not fats, carbohydrates that are available. What's up?
What's a ketone?
Yeah, so I do not know. But a ketone,
that's gonna be the real that we.
Oh well, you got me. So a ketone, from my understanding, is what allows you to start actually going for your body fat. So if you're in a caloric deficit, what I understand, with your carbohydrates up, your insulin levels are up, and it prevents you from accessing your body fat. But as soon as your insulin levels, I mean, and so if you're in a caloric deficit, your body will, instead of going for any body fat, is blocked by your insulin, so it has to go for your muscle mass. Now, this is why a ketone diet or a intermittent fasting diet would suggest to lower your carbs, to lower your insulin levels. And now, instead of going for your muscle mass, your body, with being in ketogenesis is what they'll call it, will go straight for your body fat and start using that as an energy resource instead of your muscle mass. And so in a period of when you might not have all that energy available to you in a caloric deficit diet, you won't start feeling weak, but instead your body fat will start being used as a source of energy, and you'll still continue to operate normally.
Then it'll like eat your body fat.
Yeah.
Like num num num.
So, I mean, maybe that ends up resulting in a situation where your body fat is too low to support the muscle mass that you're aiming to support when you're looking to build mass.
It's yeah, I've heard that before, and I think a part of it is true, but it's on a very short-term basis. And when you're going to ketosis, it's not going to last forever, right? So eventually, you can still store body fat if you're eating in a surplus, whether you're in ketosis or not, from what I understand. The thing with carbs and why people see so much or see dramatic results going on a keto diet and cutting their carbs completely is because when you eat carbs, you store more water, and your body weight goes up when you eat more carbs, not because you're gaining fat, but because your body's storing more water. So when people cut their carbs, also when they cut their sodium, the levels of water in your body drop, and if you ever like see somebody who's like competing in like bodybuilding, they reduce their sodium intake, which not necessarily carbs, but in order to do that, they do that because they want to look as peeled as possible. When you have more body water retention, you look more bloated, but you also you look more pumped up in the gym too. So people eat carbs also to get a pump.
Interesting.
Because you see like the veins popping and shit like that, and that's usually because they got that carb pump. But like the effects of these things are very like short term, and they're not long term. So people that are trying to go for a long term weight loss, the only way to actually get it and have it based off body fat is through caloric deficit. Calories are what we get our energy from. If we're lacking energy, our body is going to use the fat stores in our body for that energy. That's the way I've understood it, and it's worked for me. And there are a bunch of scientific people I can cite that kind of confirm that. One of the people I listen to, Dr. Mike Israetel, he has his PhD in sports nutrition, I believe, or sport. Similar to what Anthony got his degree in, but he has a PhD.
Anthony, friend of the show.
Friend of the show, Anthony. Anthony,
shout out Anthony.
I don't know if he's a friend of the show, actually.
But he is. He just passed a PT exam, I think it was.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna say he just passed away.
Oh, God bless Anthony. Rest in peace.
Anthony, love you, buddy.
John has a question, but I have a question too. So, no, you can go ahead.
I want him to point at me.
John.
Oh, thank you. We have been talking a lot about like working out and muscle mass. I feel like the thing that we didn't really touch on a lot is like a big part of this change that you've done has also been with like you've been dedicating yourself a lot more to working out and like caring more about like gaining muscle and how you look. But when you switched to this diet, did you experience, and I know you mentioned like feeling like you may have done it wrong at first, like went too hard. So like did that affect your performance in the gym at all? Like did you see like a big dip in performance? And I guess with that question too, like where are you at now that you're actually like making like improvements?
Yeah. And that's a good question. Because when I was in the middle of the diet or middle of, I had a very severe caloric deficit, I had no energy. I didn't have any motivation to go to the gym. I was doing it because I felt I had to. but I had no energy to actually do it. My workouts were suffering because of it. And when you're on a low calorie diet, you try to do cardio so you can eat more, because when you're doing cardio, you're burning calories, and technically it allows you to eat more um on a calorie deficit. I got to the point where I was so exhausted I couldn't even do cardio. I used to, before this diet, I was running like 5 miles a day, and that's a little excessive. If for someone who wants to build muscle, because apparently running is very it's impactful in the sense that it's not good for building muscle. But regardless, I was able to do 5 miles a day. When I was really severe on this deficit, I could not do any form of like moderate cardio. Like I started to have to just do walking as my only form of
Oh.
cardio. I still don't really do a lot of cardio, but that's just more because of my time constraints now. Like if I had to run, I could. But yeah, there was a time where my performance in the gym really sucked. It's a lot better now. The only thing that limits me now is my time constraints with school and everything, which I'm hoping will change now that I just finished one of the classes that I was in. But um yeah, if you're not keeping in check the fact that you need to eat a certain amount at least to get the energy to go to the gym.
Mm.
And the other thing that people use is caffeine, and then they'll use energy drinks when they're on a deficit, and those are great tools. The only thing is, I already had a pretty big tolerance to caffeine, so increasing caffeine didn't really do much for me. Like you saw me, I just downed this espresso,
You're supposed to have enough
and
for the whole show. So at the end, we do a little closing toast. I don't know if John told you about this part, but oh, okay, he has more. He has
Damn
more.
it, Fuck it.
I thought we were gonna have
yeah.
to take a 5-minute break for you to brew another.
Oh no, I gotta save that coffee for tomorrow anyway.
Got you.
But no, I mean, even a higher intake of caffeine wasn't helping me. So yeah, there was a time where it really, really impacted me. Now I'm a lot better. I actually have the motivation to go to the gym and stuff. But yeah, that's also a big part of the anabolic diet, is to make sure that you have enough energy still to go to the gym. And like I said earlier, it's a balancing act. You know, you can't go too hard on it, or else you're gonna burn out. Just like anything, really. But Greg Doucette, one of the bodybuilders that I watch, he really does preach that. Like, yeah, you got to go hard in the gym, and in order to do that, you need to take in a certain amount of calories. You can't cut it too low. And that was my big mistake in the beginning.
Got it. So I noticed that we're approaching an hour, but I do have like 2 more questions that I wanted to ask. I know John might have a few more. I know he wanted to close with one at least. So let's speed through that a little bit perhaps, and then get into what the future plans are for the Anabolic Italian. So one thing that I think we already started touching on, but I wanted to get a little bit more specific, is with how sustainable do you find the diet itself? Is it difficult to, and if it's difficult as somebody who's just getting started? So I know you mentioned it's easy to run into these pitfalls of perhaps getting yourself into a caloric deficit, lowering your body fat too much where you have libido issues, and whatnot. So what are some other perhaps struggles that you may have not mentioned in starting up the diet? And then going forward long term, how sustainable is the diet compared to other diets?
Yeah, and that's a good question. So this wasn't the first time I've actually tried calorie counting. It's the first time that I actually did it successfully. Back in, I think, the freshman year of college, I tried calorie counting, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I was estimating things, I wasn't weighing them out, and I failed. And I just like, this doesn't work. Like, this is not working. So there's a learning curve when you start, on a calorie counting diet, and it's very hard because you have to limit yourself. If you're going out and ordering out food, you need to make sure that the times that you're not ordering out food, that you're weighing everything to the gram to be as precise as possible. Because whenever you eat out, you have no idea how many calories. I don't care how good you are at calorie counting. I know for a fact I still can't, estimate to the nearest 10 calories what I'm ingesting on like a Saturday night when I go out to dinner. I can get pretty close, but you have to get selective when order out. It has a big social impact, and that's a big challenge, especially for me. I have a girlfriend, and she does not follow the same diet as I do. So obviously deciding where we're going to eat, what we're going to eat, the fact that it takes me a long time to go through a menu and find the best thing that I could order that's not going to cause any interferences with my goals. Also just hanging out with you guys. I mean, if we're at a party, and I'm not a heavy drinker regardless, but I'll only have a one beer or two beers, and everyone always feels let down because I'm not having like tons of shots. I'm just not a big drinker to begin with, but
Mhm.
also those drinks are empty calories, and people always call it that, and it's true because you could still eat a whole pizza after drinking like 5 shots or taking 5 shots, and those 5 shots, what, 500 calories? So it's just like there's no like nutritional value to the alcohol that you're ingesting. It doesn't make you any more satiated, which when you're on a calorie deficit, that's what you want to look for, is like something that satiates you. So you have the social aspect, you have the learning curve of, applying a calorie deficit, which is very hard to do when you're new. You have to have a scale, weigh the food. You have to weigh the food while it's raw before it's cooked, because the actual weight of the food will change while you're cooking it. And then you basically have to track it with I use MyFitnessPal. There are other apps out there. I think Josh did that. Maybe that's a good idea for you. Make a calorie counting app. Maybe one where you could take a picture of the food and it does it for you.
With AI, it does
Just
stuff.
taking a picture of the
It's gonna-
food in itself. Oh, that sounds like a challenge.
Yeah, I mean that's it definitely.
You could tell
people
them-
would pay you.
You
big
could tell them
bucks for that.
it's AI, but it's really me on the other end, just like writing a random. I'm just writing a random number.
Yeah, you're gonna become my slave with that.
Big lawsuit,
Yeah.
inaccurate calorie counting.
Wow.
But yeah.
You almost answered two of my questions there, because one
Yeah,
of my
no,
other
this-
questions that I didn't ask, but I was curious about, but it wasn't the one that I had on the table to close off with, for myself at least, was about a calorie tracking method. But I'm glad you answered that. That was one that I wasn't gonna ask. But also, could you get a little bit more into perhaps the sustainability here with the diet?
Yeah, it is definitely, if you're past the learning curve, then it becomes more sustainable, because I view tracking calories as like more like a boot camp. Whereas like it's a phase. Once you get really good at it, you might not necessarily need it. Like I don't plan on counting calories for the rest of my life. I feel like once I can, and I've gotten a lot better over the past year, like I could just look at food and say, okay, it's like 150 calories the most for like an apple or something. Um, but if you're not past that learning curve, if you still don't know how many calories are in it, it's very unsustainable if you have a lot of time constraints. Like I did this before I started grad school. So I had a little bit more time on my plate where I could learn and spend more time, weighing everything out piece by piece, every ingredient. But I'm also OCD, so I weigh things that don't necessarily make much of a difference, like weighing like garlic. Like, okay. But somebody who's new might want to do that to get used to it. It's not very sustainable if they have time constraints, or if they're living in a house with a bunch of people and the ingredients that are in their fridge aren't necessarily low calorie options. I have to do a lot of my own grocery shopping. Obviously, my mom doesn't eat the same food as I do. And if you don't have the means to, to buy that food too, it's not that it's necessarily expensive, but um, sugar alternatives are very expensive. Swerve, which is like a 0-calorie sweetener, is pretty expensive. Um, More so when you go into like the baking area of like low calorie stuff, it gets a little bit more expensive. But also because you're eating more protein, you're gonna want more like lean meats like chicken and turkey, and that can get, protein in general can get expensive. Um, so there's also that sustainability in terms of cost. The social aspect, which I talked about earlier. If you're trying to go out with your friends, you know, I think I do a good job at it, but it still takes me like a half hour to order at a restaurant sometimes if I'm not familiar with the menu ahead of time. Some like franchises will list the calories, which kind of helps, but then you're also like trying to think about the macros. Like, okay, yeah, it might be low in calories, but how many grams of protein would I get out of it? So uh, it's kind of why I'm an accounting major, because I feel like all I do is look at numbers. So I look at the calories, look at the macros, and I try to make it all balance out. um, but uh,
Hey, but I
but
mean,
yeah,
look, it sounds like you have an opportunity here where you're doing a job that is very difficult for other people to do, where it's anabolic diet, as I understand it, is something that requires a lot of effort up front. You have to put in all the work to be able to actually spend time counting calories, spend time cooking, because it doesn't seem like you're able to just get a lot of this food off the shelf. You have to actually prepare it yourself. You bring that to the table of other people, you might be onto something here, so they don't have to go through all the effort that you're doing.
yeah, and that's true. And like I said, it's a learning curve. So not and anyone off the street's not going to be able to jump into the diet. You have to spend the time, and even if the like let's say you pick up like a protein bar, protein bars generally might be a little bit more like you might be able to trust it more, but not necessarily. Like if you look at the serving size of like a protein bar, and I'm thinking of Quest, it'll say like 180 calories and it's 60 grams, right? And you take that bar and you weigh it on your scale and it's like 64 grams. Technically, it's not gonna be 180 calories anymore. It'll be more like 200. I'm not that particular anymore, but I used to, and that's like orthorexia. That's like actually kind of like that's kind of an eating disorder, or like an OCD thing. But like I said, I don't think anybody should be that, particular. It's not healthy to be that way. But that's also something that you should be aware of when you're measuring or just trusting like the nutrition labels on food. That's why everyone weighs out everyone in the community like is a proponent of weighing out food, is because that's how you get the most accurate results. And if you're in so much of a deficit that every calorie really does matter, that's when it becomes important to know how to do it. But like I said, if you spend the time and learn how to do it and you invest that time, 2 3 years down the line you could do it in your head without actually having to track so obsessively. But yes, you're right, it is. That would be cool if I could just get paid like, I don't know, a modest $50 an hour to track someone's food. But that's also like kind of impossible if you think about it. You'd have to like live with them, right?
Well, I mean, if you set up the right system in place where you're able to set up the operations that they get the food right to their table, or they have all the recipes and the resources.
Oh, so you mean like a meal prep kind of company?
Could be a meal prep company, could be a delivery service, whatever direction you want to take it, but also it could just be a resource service. You have some resources that you're already building up because of your brand on Instagram. You have a ton of posts that you mentioned earlier in the show, like you were looking for something that you can make with food in your fridge. You went to your own Instagram to find out a recipe that you're able to have, and you're like, oh, that one, the lasagna with chicken on top. I'll have that today. I forget what it was.
That one is not in the books yet.
There is I forgot what it's called. I don't know if you know of it, other podcasts. I don't know, it's called like something fresh, better fresh. It's like some they sponsor a lot of podcasts, but
HelloFresh?
HelloFresh, yeah.
Mhm.
So there's HelloFresh, and HelloFresh recently bought it's something green, like Hey Green or something, and it's like they send the packaged ingredients to people's houses, like however, like you could order it like to come like once every other day or like once a week or once a month or whatever, but they'll send you just like a package of ingredients with like a book or whatever that tells you like what you can make with it. So it's like it's not like a meal prep thing, but it'll like source the ingredients for you and then tell you like you can make this thing on this day using this, and it'll be measured out to make exactly that. So that's something.
Yeah, we
cool that
actually
you
had
can
a
do.
trial of that. Aaron, through our friend Andre, we got a HelloFresh like trial, and we got like she got like 6 different meals from it, and um, I had to edit. Obviously, I had to edit the recipes a little bit to make it fit my needs, but no, it was really convenient. Thing is, it's like fucking $80 a week or something like
Yeah.
that, I think, or something crazy like that.
Yeah, it's only
So
for a
they
specific
can get
market.
expensive, but it's basically like someone's doing your food shopping for you,
Yeah.
so you don't have to think about going to the store. You know, just get that food directly to your door,
Yeah.
which is nice, especially for people that are already ahead of that learning curve and they know what to do with that food or how much to put of it. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely helpful. I like that. I would probably consider doing maybe like a lower calorie anabolic version of that. That would be actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, another idea too is I know you mentioned like making your own recipes or like some of your own sweets. Like if you can get enough people interested into it, I know it's already a very small market. Get that onto the shelves of certain supermarkets, local supermarkets, and see if that would build up the interest at some point to get into a larger supermarket, and then get that on the shelves of everywhere.
Yeah, no, I've actually considered like doing my own like Italianized kind of protein powder kind of thing, or like supplements that people can use in baking. Some people use like casein or whey protein powder, just to add that extra protein that's hard to get in like actual desserts like donuts and cookies and stuff like that. I was like, it'd kind of be cool to make my own protein powder, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely something that I've considered, or even just my own like prepared food.
Yeah. I mean, I know one of the
That would
inspiration
definitely be cool.
some of the inspiration that's like driving that thought is there's this company, I forget the name of it. I think they have like a bird as one of their logos, but they got their food onto.
Oh, it's Twitter.
Yes, Twitter.
Wawa.
Or Wawa. Yeah, there's many companies with a bird on their logo, but this one is like a Mexican bird. And so it's somebody with Mexican heritage that was on a gluten-free diet thinking about, well, how can I make tortillas without any gluten? And so this is when also gluten-free diet restrictions was becoming more and more well known. She was able to make a gluten-free version of her tortilla and get that on the shelves of different markets, and then get that onto the shelves of, built up enough attention to get that onto the shelves of Whole Foods. So you go to Whole Foods today, you can actually find these tortillas. But
I was just there today, actually. I should have looked for them.
yeah, I'll look this up and research it afterwards, and like maybe get that over to John.
Put it in the show notes.
He can put it onto social media. But it is definitely something that like reminds me a lot of what you're doing right now, doing the Anabolic Italian, where you're in a specific niche. Not many people are currently following a Italian anabolic diet specifically, but it could be something that could build up attention if you find the right customers. And
Yeah.
you can make your own products that are specific to, well, these are good substitutes for Italian food that you can't really find off the shelf right now. And so if you're able to make your own variants to make it an anabolic accommodated substitute, that can get onto the shelves of different markets if it builds up enough attention.
Yeah, I think that actually one of the things that I forgot to mention earlier was like making a anabolic pasta. Um, I've yeah, people in the fitness industry that probably don't care obviously about the authenticity like to use like chickpea pasta, and you've probably seen it in stores. I'll be honest, I've tried it and it sucked. Like the taste sucks. Like I tried. Barilla makes a chickpea pasta. They also make the protein plus pasta, which is what I use in my recipes. But they make this chickpea pasta that Tashkif, it's horrible. But I tried it and I was like, I'll try to be honest with it because it was made by Barilla. It's a trusted brand. But no, I say I would like to make like a lower calorie, because even the one that I use, the protein plus pasta, is for 56 grams you get 190 calories and 10 grams of protein. I like to aim for a ratio of like for every 10 calories I like to get at least 1 gram of protein. So it's not quite there, but it's better than like the traditional macros of like serving of pasta by like maybe 1 gram, 10 calories less and 1 extra gram of protein. I think they use like pea protein powder or whatever, something like that. And that's how they get that. But I'd love to experiment with it and try to make my own anabolic pasta.
Yeah.
That tastes tastes pretty close to the real thing. But
Yeah, I think there's
but yeah,
opportunity there.
that's a good opportunity. Yeah, you're right.
Just to be quick, I did just look it up real quick, just so I wouldn't have to put this on my follow-ups and have work to do tonight. It's called Siete. Siete.
Siete.
Siete.
Nice.
They do have a bird icon here. It looks like
Cassava
a
flour, grain-free tortillas.
So they're grain-free, gluten-free tortilla substitutes or alternatives that are pretty popular now. Anyway, that was what I was referencing. No need to put it in the show notes. If you want to put it in the show notes, feel free.
All right. I won't. All right, Alex. I think we kind of talked a little bit about the future stuff, but we can hear if you have anything maybe that wasn't touched on. But I guess moving forward, I know now you're kind of in an exciting time that you can dedicate more time to this. But where is it that you see Anabolic Italian going, and are there any like specific things that you'd like to do with it?
Yeah, so I am getting back into it now. I kind of took like a hiatus for the month so I could, finish up with this class. But my goal is to get back into it and probably do more like seasonal stuff. Because I feel like I missed out on the Halloween stuff. I really wanted to do something for Halloween, and I guess there's still time at the time of this recording because we're still got one more week of October left. But
No, we're in the third week of
uh,
November.
oh well, I don't know.
Yeah, Thanksgiving
This
stuff.
podcast is like running like
Is this
3
episode gonna
weeks.
come out the week of Thanksgiving?
I think it's the second week of
Second week of Thanksgiving
of November.
We're double up on Thanksgiving this year.
Depending on when you're listening to this, I might be
That's
on a
true.
higher calorie intake.
Ooh. You'll have to let us know. Maybe you could give us an update when we're closer to when this releases.
I guess to make it traditional or to follow with the trends, what will be your Thanksgiving recommendations for anabolic diet?
Well, turkey breast is great, honestly. Just don't lather it on with like a lot of gravy. Gravy is really not that high in calories either. I mean, it really depends. And don't lap up on the stuffing too much. But honestly, on holidays, give yourself a break. I wish I gave myself a break, but I tend not to. Like even when I'm like, okay, I'm not counting calories today, I'll still try to avoid excess calories, obviously. But it's Thanksgiving. Just enjoy the day.
Yeah.
But going back to that, turkey breast is like a go-to. I put it in my salad all the time, so it's pretty anabolic.
How about
Just
cranberry sauce?
cranberry sauce, like fresh cranberry sauce might be okay, but if you're adding like extra sugar and
What
shit
about
like
from the
that,
can?
What about green casserole?
what's that?
What about pumpkin pie?
What about corn on the cob?
Corn on the cob, probably. If you add without the butter, is like 150 per ear.
What about roasted corn?
Roasted corn is probably the same thing. Oh well, I don't know. I don't know how you make roasted corn. You add something to it?
No, it's just he just asked for another corn item after I asked.
Well, it is what it is. Maybe it's a little slow.
So I know John started with the question, but let's finish off with the question. Any other goals with the Anabolic Italian?
Definitely to expand my. I really wanted to start like a YouTube or a podcast, like a YouTube channel. I was thinking about doing a while ago. It's just that I hate the idea of having to start something and then not be able to like follow through with the future projects. So like with Instagram, at least I know that I can reasonably post every so often. If I had a YouTube channel, I'd have to dedicate a lot more time that I don't know if I'll have in the future. Which of course is a big thing about taking risks and stuff like that. I think you talked about that in one of your earlier podcast episodes. But yeah, it's that whole uh, not knowing the future and the fear of the unknown. And I've struggled with that a lot with the page because I'm like, well, if I start and I make one YouTube, which I do have one like YouTube short or whatever they're called, of the French toast a la carbonara, because I was so proud when I made that recipe that I was like, oh, I have to make a video for this. But other than that, like I'd love to like do like more like this kind of like dialogue kind of videos, or like give people like tips on what they could do to kind of eat at a calorie deficit and make it more sustainable, because that is pretty much a big challenge that people would want to come over. But But yeah, no, that's like my project is like maybe to get involved in more like these kind of settings and just having like discussions rather than me just posting recipes. Because I feel like I could probably help a lot more people that are new to the diet that way. Whereas the recipes that I post, I give the list of ingredients. I don't go into too much detail or any detail at all of how to make it because I usually assume that the people that are following me already know how to make the actual versions of the food. They just could benefit from using the substitutions and the amounts of the ingredients that I use in it. Um, but that's another goal of mine is to actually show people how to make the food too. So for outsiders like you guys, I'm sure you guys are like all noobs at cooking. No, just kidding. But for you guys that might not know how to make like Italian food, you guys would probably benefit from like seeing a video of me doing it. But that comes into the investment of actually getting a camera, getting someone to record for me, or getting like a tripod and then having someone edit the video. So like there's a whole lot of investment that's gonna have to go into it.
Yeah, that's always the hard part, I think. I definitely relate to that a lot. Starting something is a big commitment because you want to be consistent, but sometimes it's better just to throw yourself into it too and just like learn along the way. There's a lot, I think, even with us starting this podcast, there's a lot that you learn just from like not hesitating so much about the logistics and just kind of like throwing yourself into it. I think even with your diet, you kind of there were like a lot of pitfalls, but you did learn a lot from that too. So there's a lot of
100%.
value from that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that if I didn't go through all that struggle in the beginning, I probably wouldn't be where I am now, obviously, because going forward, at least when I'm in those shoes again, where I'm like, oh, I need to, lose weight. I know, okay, don't overdo
Yeah.
it though, because then you won't be able to retain your muscle and you're just going to lose all the progress you made already. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of points of, when I've struggled and I've learned from it and I've moved on, it's made me a lot better at it. So you're 100% right. And, you probably know that from filming, not just on the podcast, but also from the AlzateFilms and stuff like that.
Want to close this up?
Yeah. This has been wonderful. This has been beautiful. It's been a great time. Did you have a good time?
I had a wonderful
I had a
time.
great time. This was so fun. Do you want to be our guest next week?
Sure.
We have other things.
I think next week we have 2 girls coming on, but you could come on too.
You can
Two
be.
girls.
Yes, we do.
Oh yeah, so we're teeing that up. Next week is the 20 and Trying podcast is coming over to We Should Talk More. We recently were on their podcast, which I think by the time this podcast comes out, we'll have already released. So hope you guys like that one.
But
and
let's not take away too much attention from
our
the man of the hour now, because like
beautiful
you
guest.
mentioned girls, no one's gonna want to think about Alex. So
yeah, at this point they're tuning out.
yeah, no, you have to plug him. You have to give him a moment to.
Well, I'll let Alex plug himself.
Yeah, you have to allow him to plug himself
Alex,
now.
Thanks again for joining us at the We Should Talk More podcast. Why don't you let people know where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at the Anabolic Italian. I also have a YouTube where I have that one YouTube short. You can find me there. And you could also find me in a couple videos on AlzateFilms. Shameless plug to AlzateFilms as well. So check out all those videos. And thanks for having me on the podcast, guys. It was great.
He's the most interesting man on the planet. Dos Equis.
My God.
Thank you for being on.
Cheers.
It was a pleasure having you.
As we do in every podcast. Cheers.
Oh yeah, toast.
Toast.
Salud.
Oh, that went well.
So you guys want to go? Okay.
Yeah, I do.